Welcome to Think Big with Dan and Qasim. Join hosts Dan Melnick and Qasim Masood as they explore big ideas, limitless possibilities, and engage with visionaries, entrepreneurs, and thought leaders who dare to dream big, get inspired, motivated, and find practical tips for personal growth. Think big, dream bigger, and ignite your potential.
All right, welcome back, everybody. Guest today, Lauren and Coulter Darlington. It's great to meet you guys, and congrats on the baby. I see the little cutie there. Her name is Sloan, I believe. It's really great to meet you guys. Thanks for coming on. And tell us, first of all, where you're calling in from and what you guys do with your ranching business.
Yeah, thanks for having us, Matt. So we farm and ranch outside of a small 600-person town in north central Montana. My family has been here for over 100 years. They homesteaded here in 1916. Yeah, and we've been raising cattle and crops for a long time, but Lauren and I started a farm to table, a pasture to plate beef business. So we ship beef all over the country.
That's amazing. And then, so I suppose when you both took over for the ranch, how long did it take you guys before you went to this kind of, is that like exclusive for you all now, the way that you're selling that kind of direct to consumer with like food service restaurants and things like that? Is that pretty much what you're doing with the ranch now?
No. So we still grow cash crops, and then we have other cattle as well.
That's awesome. And I mean, what's your kind of experience been like selling the direct to consumer that way? Obviously, it seems to be a kind of a macro trend in that department. I've actually had a few other ranchers on the podcast as well that went from doing either like completely wholesale if they were butchering their own meat or had other products, kind of going that direction from like either like selling at the sale barns or selling to wholesale predominantly. So, what has your kind of experience been kind of making that transition from where your parents left you with maybe more traditional modes of revenue for the ranch?
Yeah, so we started our business about a year ago, and so it's just been a huge learning curve. We've kind of just had to, experiment with shipping and marketing, things like that. So really, we just kind of jumped in feet first and have kind of had to grow and learn as we've gone. We've done some courses where we've learned a little bit about marketing. Neither Coulter or I come from a marketing background, so just kind of relying on other people in the industry to kind of help lead us and teach us things that we wouldn't have been aware of.
Yeah, no, it's amazing. And I guess as far as when you think about your kind of ideal customer, for what you can tell who you're selling to, the people are buying from you online or the restaurants that you're working with, what is that kind of carved out into for you guys? Does anything surprise you as far as like any specific demographic or age range or anything like that?
Yeah, so really we've seen a big draw with people who are interested in homesteading, people who are interested in having the security of having beef on hand, which I guess isn't all that surprising, but I would say that's definitely our largest audience.
Yeah, that definitely makes sense. I mean, it seems like I'm assuming you guys are kind of homesteading as well. Do you kind of share that message and that process and that lifestyle through like your social media channels and things as well? As that kind of the community that you built out with these products too?
Yeah. So our mission statement is to unite the land, the animal, and the family at mealtime. And so, yeah, that's basically what we're trying to do. I grew up never having to wonder where the beef I was eating came from, right? We just had our own beef. And, it wasn't until I married Lauren that I realized, that not very many people have that. That's what we wanted to create was, we think that everyone should have the ability to know where their food comes from and know what's in it.
And so with the social media, a lot of what we share on there is helping them kind of see what goes on day to day on the ranch, how the beef is raised, that they consume, those kinds of things.
Yeah, no, it's so amazing. And tools from other than your kind of organic social media channels that you post on, where are you kind of finding the most, I suppose, kind of traction with the other types of marketing things that you've learned either from your courses that you've taken or anything else that you have set up?
I think, social media, but creating an email list has been big for us as well. Having a good email list.
We've done some experimenting with like posting ads in magazines this year. This year we're kind of experimenting with a lot of different marketing avenues to see what works best for us.
No, that's awesome. And I guess from the logistical side as well, I've spoken to a few other ranchers, as I mentioned, and one of the biggest challenges I know for some folks, especially that are on the kind of like the corners of the country, when they do think about shipping nationwide, is obviously, when you're shipping this stuff from, Florida, California, or from where you guys are, maybe to like a New York or Maine or something. Obviously, it's going a long way. It needs to be either frozen or refrigerated. So how do you kind of grapple with those costs and the way that you're selling it now?
So we don't offer individual cuts like a lot of people do. So that's one way. So we only ship bulk beef. We have smaller bundles occasionally. We're gonna have a Father's Day bundle coming up, things like that. But we have to drive 100 miles just to get to a FedEx to ship the beef.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
So we're very rural, right? And so it's not feasible for us to drive there every day or, every week to ship a single steak, So that's why we do bulk beef and then ship in larger volumes. So that's one way.
And so with that, we kind of follow the rhythms of nature. And so we will offer 2 beef harvests a year, one in the spring and one in the fall. And also that just means that we're harvesting the animals at their prime. But with that, it helps the shipping cost. If we're traveling that far to ship, if we can ship in large volumes all at once instead of making a trip every week, it's much more feasible for us.
That's really interesting. So, how do you kind of convey that as far as like messaging if somebody comes to the website, maybe in like the middle of winter, or maybe just heard about you guys, saw your socials? How does that kind of look for someone? Just like a specific day? Do you have like a countdown on the website or anything like that for when the next harvest is going to be?
Yeah, we use a countdown and we make it kind of an event, like something for people to look forward to. We'll kind of start email marketing heavy about a month out, just kind of letting people know who we are. We have a special finishing method. We call it pasture raised light grain finish. So the cattle remain out on pasture for the entirety of their lives. And then we just do a very light amount of grain every single day for the last about 30 days. And so just kind of educating people and making it kind of a fun event and something for them to look forward to and plan ahead for.
That's so amazing. That's so creative. And I think a lot of the ranchers that I've spoken to is obviously one of the biggest things they grapple with is trying to figure out, how they're going to get to the FedEx. There's a lot of people that do have like cattle ranches. Obviously, they're in very remote areas too. That's one of the biggest pain points, I would think. So that's a really creative way to kind of grapple with that and actually turn it into something fun instead of a negative. They're like, oh, you can only order it twice a year. Like, no, like the day is coming. Like it's almost here. It's so fun. I love that. So that's very, very cool.
Yeah, we've also done some, we offer like if you buy beef on this day, you'll be entered to win a free freezer for the beef, so we'll ship a freezer to them and the beef and, things like that to try and make it fun.
That's really cool.
And one of the things that with selling the beef direct to consumer, people always want, your premium steaks, the ribeyes, the T-bones. And so for us, we just really want to honor the animal as a whole. And a lot of the time people don't realize all these cuts, all these amazing cuts that you can make wonderful meals with. And so by selling in bulk, we're able to honor the entire animal.
That's amazing as well. And you think about it a little bit more of like, I suppose on the marketing side, what is kind of your, I suppose, when you think about doing things like that with your email list, have you guys tried to run any kind of like, paid advertising for things like that? Or are you sticking to more like the organic channels with your emails, your socials, doing things like that?
So we have done some paid advertising, primarily through Facebook or in the magazine ad that we recently ran. Otherwise, we really have just been trying to do some partnerships with other Instagram pages that align with our business and people that we think have a similar audience to us. And so that's primarily how we've gotten most of our customers.
Yeah, no, it's amazing.
We've found that paid advertisements, at least with like social media, like with Facebook and Instagram, they get you a lot of engagement and even some leads. We'll get a lot of people subscribed to the email list, but they're not greatly, so to us, we found that 10 leads from a partner that we identify with that we think would have the same values that are interested in our beef. So 10 leads from them is better than 1,000 from a paid advertisement. It's kind of what we've found out.
It's fair enough because you think about somebody like those types of engagement with that very specific type of potential customer, obviously it's going to resonate a little bit more than just like kind of a blanket paid advertising to somebody who may not be, right? So that's really fascinating. And I think marketing is obviously, a side of things for a lot of ranchers that did come from kind of a homesteading background like you, Coulter, or we kind of just, more like rural upbringing, just weren't really very involved in like, kind of the digital side of things or just like didn't come from like a business background. And so I definitely get it. It's it's a challenge for anybody, even if you do have that background. Running your own business, think about the marketing, it can take up all of your time, and it can be kind of just throwing money at the wall sometimes if you don't take the chance to do the testing and think about those things. So I appreciate your sharing your perspective on that. And I know I said to you guys before we started, one question I do always love to ask on the podcast. I'm very interested in hearing your thoughts as well. So obviously, started this kind of D2C business about a year ago. Obviously, the ranch is much, much older, almost a century, I think, maybe a little over. You mentioned Coulter. So, but if you could go back and kind of, do this undertaking again with the ranch and the direct to consumer side of the business and give yourself any one piece of advice to do it again, what do you think that piece of advice would be?
One of the biggest things is just be willing to adapt. When we first started, we thought for months and had this business plan. And it's good to have a business plan, but it can also completely change in a hurry, right? So we thought that, we'd be delivering beef all over the states, and we're mapping out, or all over Montana, and mapping out the best route to, cover most of the state. And as it ends up, a lot of beef local here in Montana. So we pivoted, and now over 90% of our beef gets shipped out of state, and we shipped beef to over 35 states last year. So,
oh, wow. That's amazing.
Yeah. And I guess another thing is just ask questions, don't be afraid to ask questions, even with people in the industry. We were surprised how willing even people that might be considered competitors, people in our industry are willing to help us.
It's fascinating. Even all the people that have come on the podcast, even if they're not necessarily ranchers, just like folks in the CPG, like kind of packaged good food and drink space, seem to be very kind of open to those kind of relationships.
Yeah.
And just kind of take, I think, like a, rising tides raises all ships sort of approach, it seems like, with most people that you talk to. So it's amazing. And it is an awesome community. I'm looking forward to being more of a part of it. I'm happy to have you guys a part of that as well. But yeah, I guess also just want to give you guys, an opportunity for anybody listening, just, if they're interested in maybe checking out the product, knowing when the next harvest is going to be, or maybe reaching out to you all for a potential business partnership in any way. What's the best way to stay in touch with you all?
Yeah, so our next beef harvest is going to be later on this fall. You can visit us at www.darlingtonranch.com. And then we also are very active on Instagram and Facebook, so you can kind of tag along with us as we ranch and raise your beef for you.
Awesome. Well, Lauren, Coulter, I just want to say thank you guys again for coming on. I really appreciate you sharing a little bit about your story and your perspective, and what you're doing with the DTC side of the business of ranching. So it's obviously something that is really struck a chord with people. I think people are kind of a little bit fed up with the typical stuff they find at the grocery store. They watch these documentaries, and I guess, and to that point too, I guess I'm a little bit curious. Like, what are some of the biggest, I will say, from your own expertise, in this business, what are kind of the biggest things that people are missing out on, or some of the benefits of eating meat that comes from something natural and homesteaded and growing the way you guys do it, rather than something you might find in your everyday grocery store shelf?
So there's actually been studies done. They've taken a single package of ground beef from a store, and they've pulled over 1,000 different DNA samples from that single package of ground beef. So, when it's mass produced, and it's a lot of it's imported from, other countries, but it's just mass produced, and they'll take, scraps from hundreds and even thousands of animals, and it's all ground together to create this, single package of meat. So that's where, buying direct from a rancher that you can trust really comes in, or you actually know what's in your food, and what you're eating and where it comes from.
It's really fascinating. I guess I would assume it's something like this, especially with maybe a longer timeline before people are actually getting the food delivered to them, than just having that interaction with your customers. What are some of the most common questions that you get from folks that are either thinking about buying, or maybe like during or after they're buying? What are some of the common misconceptions that you can see in people asking questions about the things that you guys are selling?
One of the most common questions that we get is about vaccinations, and more specifically about mRNA vaccinations. And I'll kind of let Coulter speak a little bit on that.
Yeah, so after COVID and everything, everyone's worried about mRNA vaccines. So there actually isn't any mRNA vaccines available for cattle. So, it's feel like it's kind of our job to help educate people in that way too. But people just want to know, have they had any growth hormones? Have they had any antibiotics? Things like that. So those are, being transparent is a big thing.
And that's really what makes it different buying from a rancher, because we are able to answer those questions. Whereas when you buy a package of beef at the grocery store, you have no one to go to ask those questions,
right,
to make sure that you're feeding your family something that you can trust.
Yeah, no, it definitely makes sense. And I just want to say thank you guys again for coming on. I really appreciate what you're doing. I think it's super important. And I just want to wish you all the best of luck and continued success. And congratulations on your new third member of your family. And really thank you guys for coming on. And I really look forward to staying in touch as well.
Yeah,
all right. Thanks, Matt.
Yep. Thank you guys. Thanks, everybody.